right, everybody, welcome to episode 7, week 7 of See You at Mike's. I'm Trevor Binstock.
I'm
I'm
Tyler Joseph Swatlowski, and that is Prane.
Right. Yep, there we go. Good job,
And
folks.
Yeah.
here we are,
Well-oiled machine.
Sunday,
Yeah.
April 18th.
Clearly. Apologize for the delay, everyone. For one, we were just kind of ironing things out because we hadn't gotten the chance to talk throughout this week too much. As you know, it's kind of a busy time of year for everyone for different reasons. And then for two, my roommates are making a chili, and it smells quite nice, but they need to open up like a can of like San Marzano tomatoes or something, and we don't have a can opener, so we have a can opener. It's just that like it doesn't really work. So it was a process of like puncturing the can with just the can opener, but not being able to twist it, and then like taking a spoon, and like holding it as if you're like a 3-year-old trying to hold silverware, and then just like grinding the spoon against the can, which also like isn't obviously good for your spoon, and probably like maybe gets like dust of like can and spoon into the material that you're getting the can out of. But if you do need to open a can and you don't have a functioning can opener, just take the spoon, hold it like a pencil that like a 3-year-old is holding, just go back and forth, and you too can also conquer the can. And
You were gone for 15 minutes trying to open the can. I just picture you guys down on the sidewalk, like smashing it against the concrete like a otter trying to open a clam or something.
I've seen a lot of those clips lately from like zoos of just otters opening clams.
Yeah, because they're just super
Like I guess
cute.
it's yeah.
Otters are an adorable animal.
Trendy AF.
I always get like sussed out because like I can never tell whether it's like big zoo or whether it's like small sanctuary that is like sponsoring the clip. So it's like, and my either immediate reaction is just like, oh, this is so cute, and like we should have more of this, or like, oh my god, I'm being seduced by big zoo.
Big zoo.
But if you like look into the like whoever posted it, you can kind of figure it out pretty quickly. Like, so that's another lesson for everyone, to always be skeptical when you're watching cute videos of animals on the internet. You never know who's posting that stuff.
I love how you can put the word big in front of anything and everyone will know what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like there's a big everything.
There's a big
like,
everything.
to be clear. It's like what's the rule where it's like, oh, if you can think about it, there's like a porn for it or whatever.
Rule
What's the rule?
34.
Okay, so that's also like the case for like if you like corporatized versions of things.
Yeah.
And if you can use big to describe it, they are evil.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, precisely.
Without a doubt.
What are big things that are not evil?
I can't think
I've
of
seen
one.
this.
So they all must be evil.
Say it. If big things are evil, the opposite is true for dogs.
Oh,
Usually, the bigger the dog,
yeah,
the better the
Mm,
dog.
yeah.
Usually.
Usually. I found myself warming up a lot more to cats lately. I feel like I've never been anti-cat, but
Dude.
you know, like our society conditions us to be pro-dog and just like ambivalent at best towards cats.
That's just what big. That's what Big Pet Store wants you to
That's what
think.
I'm saying. Because there's more profit in dogs. That's what it is. But cats, I'll say it, folks.
Dude.
As a dog person, cats are great. All right. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here because you guys appreciate cats, but I feel like, it's just like as you're growing up, it's like, oh, what's your favorite animal? A cat? What the heck?
Yeah.
Like
Dragon.
It's like
Take that, Big Pet Stores.
anyways,
They should have dog zoos. You go there and like it's just dogs, but it's like a petting zoo, but like just like a bunch of dogs.
I
and
think
there's, like a cat area too, but like everyone always wants farm animals, but why not just a bunch of like really friendly dogs?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, my first thought would be there are like certain dog sanctuaries, but there's also just dog breeders, which
Mm.
we don't necessarily love. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure if there's like a same to same equivalent of just like dog petting zoos.
A bunch of
Like, I wanna go to-
universities like during this time will get like puppies and
Oh, like therapy
therapy
dogs.
dogs and
Yeah.
tote them around campus.
I wonder, like in different countries, if there's things like that, like whether like perhaps like countries where there's like lots of stray dogs, or like there were lots of stray dogs, or just other countries that just randomly have petting zoos that include dogs. I'm not sure.
Maybe.
Much to think about.
Much to think about.
Anywho, as we alluded to, it's getting to be the end of April.
Mm-hmm.
In these, as we know, are very unprecedented times. They're the forgotten class of 2021, as some people are calling it, is walking out the door.
Why is it called that? Do you know?
I mean, people are using it in different terms. Like I feel like I've seen like a few like op-eds here and there about like the forgotten class of 2021. I mean, I haven't like read any of them. I mean, superficially, I would imagine like one of the points is just like, oh yeah, we thought like the people graduating or like whatever they were doing last year, like we thought they had it bad.
Oh.
But it's like, no, like this year's like swath of people graduating high school and college just like didn't have anything. I mean, I guess unless you're in states that like just pretended COVID wasn't real, I guess. But
Sorry.
yeah, who could have think of that one? But yeah, this is happening. It's April, it's 2021, and I feel like if you're graduating school, you're in one set of limbo. If you're not graduating and you're just kind of living, if you're already in a limbo, then I guess it's just twice the limbo, or like not a limbo at all because you were already in limbo. I don't know. There's all sorts of limbos going on, and I feel like we were talking a bit before the stream. Trevor, you were kind of describing a bit of a lull you find yourself in. So do you want to hammer off a bit on what you're feeling?
Yeah, I can complain. So
Do it.
So this semester, I picked up a class for the last 6 weeks. So my workload only increased by 3 credits, but it really doubled because, it's 3 credits crammed into these 6 weeks. And so I've just had a lot to do, and it's been a lot of studying outside of class, and then it's been a lot of meeting on campus in the evenings for that class or the labs associated with it. Along with that, I'm starting a new job that'll be getting going at the end of this month, and then, gaining more momentum in the summer. And so I'm sorting out what I'm doing with like my old jobs or like my seasonal work. I can't really make a call on that until it starts. Basically, May 15th, I'll graduate from college and these classes will be done. I'll have a better lay of the land about what I want to do for my work. I will have gotten further past the transition in between like winter fitness and summer fitness. Like right now, that's another thing. I'm not really like quite sure how I want to exercise my body. So like there's a lot of these things where I just feel like I'm in waiting mode, just doing like what I need to do just to make sure that, everything goes smoothly for graduation. Just keeping in touch with like my bosses, everything like that, just waiting for these 4 weeks I have left to be over, which at some point, everybody does it. Like I just need to make it to this point, I just got to get past it. But, I don't want to be doing that so much. I want to enjoy the present, even if the present is tough. I want to still be able to make plans. I get like one thing I said is if I have 6 free hours in the day, and studying maybe takes 3 for any particular day, there's 3 hours where I very well could call up a friend, go do something, start a project. I end up just kind of sitting in my room, like looking around, just not wanting to start anything, not feeling like I can give any time to anything other than studying, even though there's really no studying to do at that particular moment. So yeah, like you said, it's going to be kind of different for the 3 of us and different for everybody, but I just wanted to talk about this sort of limbo, like you said, at this waiting mode that I find myself in right now.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of, like, I feel like it's this weird fusion of like both exhaustion and like just a ready feeling to be done with things, but also like this sort of like hollowness. Like, I don't know if you feel hollow about the year as well, and like just the things that have been different, but like there's just also just a hollowness to how you describe like this sort of like empty time and space that you feel like could be filled, but also like you feel like should only be filled with studying, even though, you know, you don't feel like you necessarily need to be studying and all. Like, you know, there's a lot of not like dissonances, but just weird spaces within all this. What do you make of that?
Um, so yeah, the weird spaces, like, let me take it this way.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of an illusion, like a fallacy, that once this time is over, you know, I'm just going to like break through the curtain into like magical, like being done with college land. But I know it's going to be, you know, going to have a lot of the same issues and same worries and everything when I'm done. And I got to remind myself that, and this has been big, like a lot of times in college, it's kind of like caught me slipping, is that I have to have like an identity and a personality and interest outside of like what's like my biggest priorities.
Huh.
So let's say just like going to school, being a student, being a pilot. It's very easy to be like, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. I'm a student. I'm a pilot. And, you know, like this is what I have to get done. This is where my energy and my money has to go. And let's take this to like the industry. If you have pilots that are like on the flight line for some major airline and that's their life, and then as cyclical of an industry as it is, you know, it takes a dip. That person might get furloughed from their job, you know, for a little while. Maybe they have to take like time off. Like that's a devastating hit if that's like your identity, you know, because what has become like a maybe like a money issue or like what am I going to do with my time issue becomes an identity crisis. And I've felt that on like a small level, with like, so now I'll hit small failures in, you know, like the pilot school, you know, just like little things. And like, it feels like my world is falling apart for like a moment. And so I'm like, well, I'm doing this really well. I'm doing this really well. I haven't done this, which would really like derail things. You know, like I'm doing pretty solid. And so right now I'm sitting here not wanting to fill those awkward gaps, you know, but like I need to, like I said, exercise. Like that's something I can do too. I need to stay in touch with my friends. Like, so do all these things so that when I break through after graduation, I don't look around and go, now what, you know, like that's what I've been only spending my time on. I get through that and I've handled those priorities, but then I've still got health. I still have my friends, my relationships, you know, the other hobbies and habits that I've been trying to develop. And so I have to keep that in mind, and that'll help me to have motivation to fill those awkward times instead of just sitting around thinking, well, I don't want to do anything with them because it's not school. It's not what I should be using my time for.
Interesting.
So give me a sec. My vent is pumping lava into my room right now. I need to shut it.
Okay,
sure.
All right, so now that he's gone, we can talk shit about him, right?
Yeah.
Psych. Ain't no shit to talk about Trev except for that he's really hot.
Yeah, that's about it. Sorry, no material here, folks.
Sorry, Trev, we were talking shit about you.
Famously.
Talking about how sweaty I'm getting.
Well, you're not that far off, actually.
I thought it was oil.
Anything else, or you kind of finished that thought of it?
I'd say I finished that thought. It's not super well hammered out because
that's why we're here.
I have a very good handle on, you know, this situation. If I did, I wouldn't need it to be something to sit down and hammer out and talk about.
Yeah.
If nothing else, we're hammerers.
Do you have anything that sticks out to you right away, Prem?
I mean, this is something we all fall into in different ways, but I find it interesting, like the sort of puzzles we find ourselves confronting of just like constructing and like maintaining identity, like generally, but especially like, you talk about like right now you're finishing up school, and like the idea of the sort of like magical feeling of like once you graduate, like you're through with college, you're through with that past self, you're a different self. But like, as you mentioned, like there's all these things that are not like your priority of being a pilot, a student, etc., that are a part of you. But it's interesting how you're kind of having to like mull over like how to actively like keep a hold of those things, because it's like, what does it mean to sort of need to hold on to things that make up your identity? As in, what is your identity if it's something you have to maintain, how can we see ourselves if it's this all ongoing process of making sure we're doing X, Y, and Z, and sort of I don't want to say constructing, because it's not necessarily like you're making yourself to be something else. It's just that where is the line between sort of what you are and what you are aspiring to be? When what you are and aspire to be, I think, Trevor, for you, are kind of similar in a lot of ways, like in that they're like good things. Like when I think of your identity, I think of positive traits and positive things that I think you like to do. But like as you're describing it right now, it seems that you're in this sort of weird haze where you're also trying to keep those things and remind yourself that those are your things to be a part of and to keep in your day-to-day life, outside of just this sort of monotony of and limbo that, once you're out of college, some of this monotony won't be there, but there's other parts that will still be there. I just think that's interesting.
Yeah. I wrote down this thing, I think stuck out to me right away. I wrote down just like a starting point, a little ramp that we can maybe jump off of with our little skateboards. I wrote down, doing things equals good. More things equals more good, but that's not true. Feels worse. Less things, when it feels worse, feels good. Doing less things when more things feels worse, feels good. As well as feels worse.
Yeah,
And
+1.
Nothing equals bad.
Yeah.
And so I wrote down, a filled life / doing things or not doing things doesn't seem to correlate with feelings of good or feelings of bad. And I can talk about working at a summer camp. The pace at which you're moving in that space is you wake up at 7 a.m., you go and in certain positions, if you're one of the counselors, you wake up at like 7-ish, 7:30. You wake up all your kids, you get them dressed, you run down to the beach, change into your swimwear, dive into the water, come back out, change out of your stuff, and then run up to do like a morning little worship service, and then eat, and then you're off to the next thing and off to the next thing, and your entire day from like 7 a.m. until just about 10, when you're exhausted and you're going to go to bed, is filled to the brim. And if you're on leadership staff at the camp that I worked at, you wake up a little bit later, 7:30ish, and you go straight to the kitchen and you help set up for the meal times, and then you serve, and then you do all the dishes. And then after that, you have to set up everything for everybody else. And so your entire day is filled up with planning the next day and setting everything up. And the pace is packed. You have a 45-minute break and then another 45-minute break, maybe. And your entire complex of 8 hours a day for work, 8 hours a day for free time, 8 hours a day for sleep is thrown out the window. And your life is totally filled. And it can feel amazing and it can feel horrible. And so I think that situation right there really highlights this sort of like filling your life with a lot of things doesn't necessarily seem to correlate with feeling good about your life. And also doing nothing doesn't necessarily correlate with a good feeling. And so in a time, I guess I'm just curious about like finals for me when I look out and I see people who are dealing with it, it's one of those times where it feels like something that is sort of equally as filled as all the other times. Like there's not necessarily more, but there is a increase of weight on what is happening and an increase of importance and sort of subjugation to the school work and that sort of thing. I'm curious if that tickles any buttons for you guys.
I can agree with that. I mean, just like the program that I'm in, there's not a lot of like final papers, not a lot of final projects. For especially the flight courses, there's just stage checks. There's studying that you have to do, but the workload, yeah, it doesn't really increase. There is just more importance. I just get more anxious spending time that isn't studying. And I think sort of what I want to get around to on this, Prem, I know you and I have talked about it at some point, so I don't recall, this was a little bit ago if you were involved in that conversation, but and like this is a big through line we can try to draw through just about any conversation, and that's whether or not you're being intentional when you're living, with your time, with like what you involve yourself in. And so what really changes is that I'm not intentional with my time. And like that's the attitude switch that happens. And like that's why it feels bad. I'm sitting there just like I don't have a lot of agency over this is what I want to do. That's what I'm going to do. So I would agree that, yeah, at least for me, like I said, it's probably different depending on what you study, but yeah, not much changes in terms of workload, but tons change in terms of just like where I'm at mentally on these like sort of bottleneck times.
Yeah. I think also in terms of intentionality, like the term often gets kind of, it can just be a little fuzzy because there's like intentionality that you can interpret as like, like you're on top of things, you have your list of things you want to do and you do them and you're all right, sorry. And you're just taking care of business, you're on top of things. But like you can also be intentional in not doing things. And I feel like I think one of the worst feelings that I resonate a lot with and I've struggled with the past couple of years especially is unintentionally doing nothing versus intentionally doing nothing. Because it feels just so awful when you're unintentionally doing nothing because you're both like aware that you're not actively trying to be like lazy or relax. So therefore you're not enjoying the relaxation that you could be feeling because you're also aware of the anxiety of like wanting to do something. Like I think in general, like it's hard to like there's two levels to this where it's like, first you have to learn how to relax in terms of like, yeah, like you don't need to be stressed all the time. You need to find places in your day where you can sort of let go of things or sort of just ease yourself. But then there's also learning how to have a healthy relationship in terms of, when you're relaxing, you should be relaxing. So then when you're working, you can be working. And like those can be times that are, I don't want to use the word efficient, but more like you are putting your all into that. If you're going to be lazy, put your all into being lazy. Because otherwise, because there's merits to being lazy and there are merits to just not doing things and not in a sort of productive, like, oh, you need to like get the most out of relaxing. Like that's kind of like not the right way to look at it. Cause it's kind of hypocritical in a way, like to assess laziness through the lens of productivity. That's kind of backwards, but more in the sense that like there's sort of like there's a human value to just feeling detached and separate from things that are otherwise always on your mind. And that isn't necessarily a productivity thing. That's just more of a sort of feeling of comfort and feel a goodness, So I think that's one way that this is like intentionality has always kind of been on my mind of just when you're not doing things, you should be fully not doing things, when you're doing things, and then hopefully that means when you are doing things, you're more apt and comfortable and sort of geared up in a positive way to do those things. So that's been at least one specific sort of frustration with intentionality for me.
Right. That makes me think a little bit. I don't know what you have to say. This is not going to be stated in a question form, but I'm wondering how it relates to what you're saying, Prem. Where I don't know if I've given this rant on the podcast before, but I think I've given it to both of you at different points, and maybe together if it was on the podcast. The idea that when people want to do, the abstracted people obviously comes out immediately. When people want to do nothing, okay, and what they're talking about, like they're looking for something mindless to do. And what I see from my perspective, looking out of these eyes and seeing a life that gets to a certain point of the day where they want to do something mindless, what I see is someone who wakes up and is on autopilot immediately, goes, does their work, does not want to be doing what they're doing, and they're only doing what they're doing so they can get to the part of the day where they don't have to be doing that thing. And then once when they get to the part of the day where they don't have to be doing the thing that they don't want to do, they continue to go on autopilot and do something mindless because that's what is believed to feel good. Because that is what is believed to relieve the stress, is something mindless, when the entire day has been filled with moving mindlessly. And so you continue to be mindless until you fall asleep. And I don't even know, I can't even count on my fingers how many friends I have that cannot fall asleep in a silent black room, with a silent dark room. They need some sort of TV, YouTube video, fan, I don't know, nightlight, whatever it is, like not sitting in any sort of space that's not filled or mindless.
Yeah. I think you were sort of touching into this last stream as well, but it's just, I really like it. Like, I think especially that last line where it's like, you're operating mindlessly, searching for a space of mindless, but you never actually get to the full space of mindless.
Yeah, it's hard.
Which, of course, we're kind of defining mindless in like two different,
right,
like related but different terms there. But similar to the whole like it's sort of like parallel to this like challenge of relaxation, of like when you're lazy but you're not actually being lazy kind of thing. Like,
right.
It's not just semantics. Like, there's a material difference here.
So, I have another question for Trev. Well, something you go, Trev.
Can you pocket it for a sec? I want to pick this up here. So I've sort of, it's a bit of a metaphor, but also its own example. So just picture, everyone's been through this, and you brought up people not being able to sleep, so it kind of relates, at least cosmetically. So you're laying in bed, more towards Prem's thing about how he sees, and you're laying in bed at night. You got something to wake up for, but you're not really tired. It's this where people always be like, oh, I have insomnia, but you're just laying in bed. You're not falling asleep. It's like futile. So you're there, you're not relaxing, you're not sleeping, and you're not making love. You have no business being in bed at all. But on the same day, you could be exhausted. It could be fully bright in your room. You can go like sprawl out on your bed and just love it, like no intention to go to sleep. You're just like, you're there, you're in bed. It feels nice. You're giving your body a rest. And so that's, like I said, an example, but also sort of a metaphor of how I see it, intentionality.
I think it's funny that you brought up that insomnia thing. There's a camper at Metagoshi who told me that he had insomnia and that he needed to play on his phone at night in the cabin. And I said, how many hours a night do you play on your phone? And he was like, I don't know, most of the night. Like, I probably only get like 2 to 3 hours a week. Like, I have insomnia, dude, duh. And I was like, let's just have you not be on your phone this week and see how that goes. And he slept freaking hardcore. Like, one of those guys where you had to, like, knock him off the bed to get him up in the morning. It was so good. But
Oh my gosh, that sounds like one of those like Facebook like boomer
yeah,
comics.
it
Like,
was
LOL.
yeah,
Like the
very
kid
much.
just needed to put that damn phone away, and then he didn't have insomnia again.
It was crazy. And
And
so
then
at
it's
the
like
end of the week, he was
oh my
like, "Oh my
gosh.
god, my phone was causing my insomnia." It's like, well, I guess you're kind of right there.
I
Yeah,
will
so
say
here's
that. Yeah,
no, you go from.
I was just gonna say that will be the one time I concede the boomer position.
Yeah,
That kid got owned.
yeah,
So using this more of like a metaphor, so people will be laying there, clearly not falling asleep, thinking like, all right, but I only have like 6 hours now until I have to get up. So they stubbornly just try to instrumentalize being in bed,
Yeah.
to falling asleep.
Mhm.
And so the same way, then I picture myself sitting in my room, studying is done, or I don't quite want to study. It's middle of the afternoon, nice day out, don't want to leave my room because that's where my study materials are, yet I'm not studying. It's the same, like, I'm like an insomniac, but the problem isn't that I can't study or isn't that I don't have the time to study. It's just that I'm just not seeing it right.
Yeah.
I have to get out of bed, go walk around, get a drink of water, which in this case, a drink of water would be like walking the dog,
Yeah.
just going, doing something else, coming back to it. So it's not just so futile.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's a first time for everything, and I really have to pee, so I'll be right back. Okay. But I do have a question for when you get back. But if you guys start a conversation, I'll just hop back in.
All right.
We'll probably just chat.
Yeah, lots of little bits and pieces of interruptions here. I wonder. Oh my gosh, he really ran there. I wonder if I'm gonna have something fun.
Maybe your roommates need help with another can. So I kind of, I was saying like where my like classes and stuff are at with my semester and everything. How's your plate looking?
I mean, I'm kind of in like not a weird, just sort of like I feel like I'm very passively operating in this spot right now. And I think some of that passivity is just because like I'm surrounded by people who are, they're leaving school, they're graduating, oh my gosh, that was so fast. Hello.
Zoo-wee mama, that came flying out of me. Holy.
Jeez.
Yeah, that was quick.
My hands are still wet. I didn't even want to dry.
Oh my gosh.
I grabbed the soap on the way in. Washed it with my feet.
That doesn't make sense. Okay.
All
right.
I'm sorry for slamming on the desk. That was probably really loud in the mic.
It was fine to us.
Well, I was just saying, or Trevor was asking sort of about my plate, and I was just saying I feel like I'm kind of in this sort of passive spot, and I feel like some of the passivity is just coming from like everyone else kind of being in this spot where they're like graduating, trying to figure out what comes next, whether it's like in the summer or for I shouldn't say the fall, just for like the rest of their lives, I guess. And I feel like, as someone who's like not in school right now and is just kind of like juggling some jobs here, some of them are expiring or like ending. Some of them like are ending a little later. Some of them it's kind of unclear. And I feel like because I've been working like since last year, like even during last school year, I feel like I'm just kind of, because I still know I'm like a student, I feel like kind of just like, man, like I haven't really ever had like a proper like break in any way. Like once vacation started after last school year, like at the onset of COVID, I was just like continuing work. So I feel, I wouldn't say like whittled out by things, like burnt out. Like it's good work and stuff, but I think just because I've kind of just been so ad hoc with everything, just like trying to pick up jobs and then like all of a sudden like juggling a bunch of jobs, like I feel like because of that, relative to everyone else kind of like trying to nail down certain things, I'm kind of just floating a bit, not in like a good or bad way, I'm just floating. But like I know, for example, I want to be in New York this summer, like I want to continue being here, so that ideally requires affording to do that. So I would say I'm passively yet perhaps somewhat actively on the job hunt. But yeah, so it's a different kind of limbo, I guess. Just very sort of going with the flow, not in like a chill, cool guy way. Just like
in a no choice kind of way.
Yeah, but not even like a no. Like I could very much choose to not be as passive as I ostensibly seem to be displaying. And maybe some of that is just my personality too. I don't know. Again, not in like a cool like I'm good under pressure, like I'm not anxious way. Like I'm surely anxious, but I don't know, man. I guess and maybe some of it too is just like because I know like, I will hopefully have a school year next year, but like people I've been in school with since for the past 3 years and, very fundamental, part of my like development as a human, like they're on their way, they're going. And I feel like especially here where people are just, we all ended up in a place like Columbia, but now everyone's like the arrows go back out. Mm-hmm. They're all like, going all over the place. It's kind of like, you kind of don't even want to really worry about that other stuff because they're all dealing with such weighted decisions, and B, it's like a few more snaps and those arrows are happening. They're gone, Yeah. Like I think it's a weirder goodbye than just like a regular graduation because we've also been sort of snatched away from some of the typical affordances of even like a usual goodbye, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like it's not even just like you don't get closure, but like you also don't get like just what you would have expected this whole year to be, which is not just like getting to be around people in like a normal, cool like senior way, but just like the casual happenstance interactions or all the people that or all the ways people will be like, oh, like I'm gonna do this my senior year, or like I'm gonna wait until, and like of course all those things didn't happen. So there's just an array of things that are not present that make I think this sort of eventual goodbye feel not necessarily worse, but just all the more different and all the more reason to, especially as someone who isn't actually participating in it, as someone who is returning to school, it just feels weird in a way, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
A bit hollow.
So, Trev, do you have something? Is it a sneeze?
It's my senior year.
Yeah. That was a thing that we did. Our junior and senior years to like
high school.
High school to make fun of seniors making a big deal of their senior year. Do you have to sneeze?
No, I don't. I was just building that up. Yeah, go ahead. So, what do you got?
The thing that I was gonna bring up, but I think some of what Prem talked about fits in with it, is one of the things that was a passing thing on the sushi bar roll that to botch Trevor's amazing metaphor that he made.
Were you going for like the Drake and Josh conveyor belt, you mean?
Oh yeah, Trev made Trev is the one with the one-liners. Listen to him when he says something cool. I'll just make fun of myself. Okay, so one of the things that was in passing, that's all that I get to say. I'm so square sometimes. And yet other times I'm
but sharp on all four corners.
Oh, there you go.
Hell yeah.
There you go. A one-liner to lift you up. Look at that.
Feed me the one-liners, baby. So the relationship to work.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was brought up was that one of the things that makes this time feel more stressful is that work and school and these sort of things feel more important. That it's the end of the school year. If you don't get your grades that you need to get, it's going to be solid that you didn't pass that class. You've been failing for a while or been just getting by, but now this is the end of it, and it's more important now because you will really fail if you don't do good. But all that other time you had chances to catch up. and plenty of other various reasons, but it feels more important. And it seems like in this more importance, it is more stressful. Also, paradoxically, it seems like there's more people are more apt to not do the work. But you might say, well, make the work less important. And that might fix some of the problems. The mind immediately moves towards, if I make this work less important, I won't do it. If it's not this important to me, if it's not stressing me out this much, then I just won't do it. And I personally, in my experience, don't think that's true. But I'm curious as to what you guys think about making the relationship to your work less important, less integral, and how, even if you just imagine it in a very superficial sense, how that can affect your relationship with it.
I remember I was meeting, actually, this is kind of funny. So as you guys know, I wrote columns last year for the Columbia newspaper, so last school year. And, we're each assigned an illustrator to, bring our words into vision. And my illustrator, we ended up actually, starting to get along very well, though we never physically met each other, because the first few weeks, month and a half, 2 months was, regular, but the columns started, and then like halfway through, like we were, kicked off campus. So like the remainder of my columns were illustrated, virtually. We would text or whatever. So we never met, but throughout the school year, we texted, and throughout the year, really a year and a half, we got to know each other extremely well through the phone, but we never ever had any relationship physically until I saw them a couple weeks ago. And that was just a sidebar of just like how weird it is to meet someone and get to know someone extremely intimately and well through virtual means, to the point that like meeting them in person, it felt like I've known them. It felt that I've shook their hand before, or like hugged them before. Like it didn't feel like this, you think like seeing people after all this time must feel like this like glass shattering kind of moment, but no, it felt like almost more remarkable in how unremarkable it felt.
Mm-hmm.
So if there are people that you've kind of gotten to know much more virtually over this past year and a half, I recommend finally trying to meet them in person to see what I'm describing here. But anyways, so we were talking about this a little while back, because they were, in the mode of trying to get something done, and just this, like, one thing for them is just like they kind of, as you say, like they kind of like needed stress to sort of incentivize them to get something done. And like it was in the context of something that like we were talking about, like theses. I've never learned the plural of this, given that I'm surrounded by like tons of people that are writing them. I never learned it.
The word you're looking for is definitely these.
These, yes. Yeah. So it was in the context of writing these, and I was saying, like, like I personally wouldn't want to pursue that next year unless it was something I really loved. Like, I know that, like, sometimes the things that get you across the finish line are like, stress, or like a sort of like impetus to just get it done for the merit of getting it done. But like for me, it's like I knew like that just wouldn't do it for me. Like it wouldn't feel, no matter the grade, it just wouldn't feel good if it wasn't like born out of love. And they were describing how like that isn't mutually exclusive. Like you can produce things that you're happy about, even if like the only thing that made them, I shouldn't say only, but like one of the only things that helped you get it done was stress. And I didn't know if I agreed with that. Like that you would be happy about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like, oh yeah, you got it done, and like it's something that you seem to want to do. But like for me, it's like if it's something you wanted to do, you wouldn't necessarily need stress to make it happen. And of course, like this is in a vacuum of like there are tons of people that like, like have different barriers or like sort of like psychological or mental issues that kind of inhibit that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that aside, like that, of course, is something that should be taken into account. Like, for example, like if you're trying to finish your homework and like you have certain issues, whether it's like with your brain or your sleep cycles or whatever, like sure, absolutely. But like just in a vacuum of just like in general, all other things equal, like for something to get done and it's something that you seem to have wanted to do, I just don't know if using stress or like relying on stress means that you wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
Not in like a you gotta want it, kid kind of way, but more just like something that like makes you feel good, makes you feel
Right.
you what to do it, So that's something that it's sort of tangential to your question about like fueled by stress, like work through stress, but also just doing things that you want through stress versus like, does that even make sense? Like, would you have wanted it if it was only accomplished through stress?
Can I pop something in here real quick? I just wanted to
Absolutely.
say that I have the stream pulled up, and it looks like we have a good handful of people watching. So thank you for that. And as always, if anything comes to mind that you wanted to add to the conversation, questions, comments, just go ahead and let them fly in the chat. We'll be watching for them.
Mm-hmm.
Good call. Good call.
This is a really complicated network. I'm trying to like pin down like some wisdom to say, but between Swat's saying like, so you have work you have to do or work you want to do, you have the importance you put on it and how that's going to affect how you see it, how likely it is to get done. And then you have, so of those things, then it's what's driving you to do them, and then how satisfied are you with the results or with how far you've come after. And I want to put, then I add intentionality to that too. Sort of like if it's something you're really intentional about doing, you probably won't need to be motivated by stress. If it's something where it's just sort of happening to you, then yeah, stress might have to come in and help you get to the finish line. And yeah, it's complicated. There's a lot there. Because everyone wants to do everything as if they're just an artist, creating
Right.
Their brain children into the world, showing everyone what they're made of. But everybody also just has things that you have to do. You don't need some divine like inspiration or like intentionality to take a shower every day. It's work, you do it. So yeah, that's just another like way for this to split into this like big tree root looking thing that we have now.
I'm curious.
At least that I have.
Yeah, I'm curious where this guy right here leads you in. So the Taoist philosophy of like right action comes out of non-action. That is when you surrender fully into the process of unfolding that is creation, moving, and you no longer want to do anything, and you no longer are reacting to what you think you need or want, then only then will the true right action come about. And so the way in which we combat this with our thinking mind is that the idea that you need to see something as a need or a want for it to get done. You need to have it inside your thought complex for it to be accomplished. And that if there was no thought, there would be no action. And so our egos want us to believe that action is a direct result only of thought. And the Taoist philosophy says that action is a result of thought, but also action is a result of this process of unfolding that is the universe. And that the only true and right action is the action that is taken that is a part of the unfolding process and not a part of our thought matrices. What do you guys think about that?
How do you think this plays into our previous discussion of like living
Right.
through reaction versus living through, was it living through reaction versus living through experience, or was it
Reacting to thought versus reacting to
thought
experience.
versus experience?
Yeah, I'd say whenever I'm like reading what you write on the Dow or listening to you talk about it here, I definitely have to sort of like put it into words that I know what to do with better.
Right.
Like the abstractions in the Dow, because it has to be abstract, like it says that in the prelude.
Yeah.
Like they make sense, but I don't know like what to do with it. But where I can like digest that and then like put it is just sort of experience versus like thought, and like the reality that you create in your mind versus the reality that's actually out there in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like from that's the way that I kind of would want to frame it. So yeah, back to Prem's question, how does that relate to the discussion about reacting to thought versus reacting to experience?
Right. So the importance thing is like when we create something to be more important, such as a final or an essay or getting a job or finding your correct career path. Maybe you're graduating high school and your next step is choosing a major in college. The amount of importance that we put on that in our thinking mind is the tool that we use, the wrench that we use to try to crank up the nozzle for our motivation to do it. And I would say that that relationship is when you react to the thought that this thing is important, paradoxically, it makes it harder to do, less likely to happen. Maybe not less likely to happen. It just doesn't change how much control you have over the situation in the first place. Because you're trying to think your way into directing an experience. But the experience will happen, not necessarily inevitably, but whatever experience will happen is the experience that's happening. And that experience is only in this moment that's moving. And so, gosh, the sanity ship has sailed. Here we go. I totally lost my train of thought, but here's something that might help you connect this. The material path that we as ego selves view ourselves on exists in this realm of time-space where you are all of what you have been up to this point. You are your wants and needs, and you are what you are going to do. That is your path. And I like to call this main character syndrome, where you become the main character of your life because you are all that you are up to this point. You are what you want. That's past, present, and then you are what you're going to do about it. And that's the realm in which we exist. That is a pendulumized realm, to bring it into See You at Mike's territory. And so the off pendulum realm is this non-centralized locality, so it's not within a being, non-centralized locality of a process that is continually unfolding and has been, always will be, and is in this moment. And that is the spiritual stuff. And so the reacting to experience is a shifting on the script of, am I reacting to this being that I thought I was up until this point? Am I reacting to what I want or think I need? And am I reacting to what I think I need to do? Or am I reacting to this infinitely unfolding process? And so the thought might come that I need to pass this test to graduate. And it's like, yeah, you might need to pass this test to graduate, but if that's just the case, then there doesn't need to be any stress correlated with that. The stress comes from the thought, I need to graduate. Is that true? Do you need to graduate? I don't know. The experience will happen. It's unfolding. The process might come up that you never graduate college. And the game then would be to find acceptance in that. And so I think what I'm trying to point to is that the acceptance of what is allows for a freer, opener space where things like doing homework can happen freer and easier if they're the right action. But if you no longer want to do your homework, not because of some sort of hedonistic, like pleasure seeking, I don't want the pain of doing homework anymore, but you are truly relieving yourself of the desire to do homework because you are open to what is, and the homework doesn't get done, and you don't graduate college and you fail out, I would posit that that experience would be experienced as the right one, the one that should have happened. Whereas if you continue through life thinking that you need to do your homework, you need to do this work, you need to get a job, and you do all this, you'll constantly be living a life where you're never fully connected with the yum yum of the universe. Sanity ship has totally sailed. I don't even know where I'm at.
Like it was out to sea, and then I think you brought it back to the dock for a good little bit. I'd say you still ended up like pretty close to shore.
Okay, good. I'm gonna turn on a little lamp.
Let's turn on some lamp. Oh, I thought that was a joke about turning on the lighthouse, but no.
No, it's actually just getting dark.
Yeah. All right. SWAT, your lamp is on. Let's also turn on a lighthouse and keep the ship at dock.
Yeah.
So one part of this, you're describing like the main character syndrome.
Okay.
The sort of thinking about yourself as an embodiment of what has been to you, or what you've seen, what you've experienced, what you are experiencing, and what is to come. Like what all this is leading towards. And then the counter is you described as being to fully accept what is. So what are you calling this formulation of being to fully accept what is? What is the main character doing contrary to accepting what is?
You cut out a little bit. I don't know if I got your full question. Can you ask it again?
What is the main character, which is just generally us as general as humans?
Right.
What are we doing that is contrary to what you're saying we should be doing? Like exactly.
What exactly is the point of contrariousness, contradiction, is when we are living only in the space where it's that beginning point and end point, that is living into the space of the alienated ego self. That is, that being will never see itself not as a solipsistic entity atomized from the world around it, moving through life. And it'll only be fueled by these sort of negative kind of tar fuel. I think that's something that we mentioned, like these sort of like burning black smoke sort of fuels of stress and like manipulating oneself into like motivation and like I'm gonna like bully myself until I finally do my homework, or like violate myself in some way so I get what I want out of myself. That's the sort of tools that the alienated ego self has to move through the world. But regardless of its knowledge or not, the unfolding process of the universe is happening. So it becomes a point of, are you going to orient yourself fully towards this thing that is atomized, a lonely self that was born and is going to die? Or are you going to orient yourself towards a infinite process that always has been and always will be, that you can then integrate your being with to be with all other beings as you move through this infinite process? And so the entire existence of ascribing to the past, present, future of the self, the ego self, is the contradictory point.
Okay. Yes, that makes more sense.
Did I do it?
Well,
All right. I mean, I'm gonna go straight to dry land with this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right, you got a kid
Got a kid.
who is one semester, like a third of a semester away from graduating, right?
Mhm.
Is, you know, not feeling present, just feeling like I just need to get done. Let's just get through it. But
Mhm.
because of that, like, I'm like, these weeks are gonna suck. Like, this is 2 weeks of my life that I feel like I'm just waiting to get done, which
Mhm.
really you shouldn't let a single day happen like that.
He's wearing a Linkin Park shirt.
It couldn't be me. All right, so even if you had like perfect understanding
Mhm.
and just like mastery over this metaphysical like way that it should be, how do you instrumentalize that knowledge and that understanding for this situation right now
Yeah.
with the goals already set where they are and the intention to reach them?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because the thoughts wouldn't come, or at least like if the thoughts do come of, man, this is going to suck, or like, I just got to get through these 2 weeks. If those thoughts come, then there wouldn't be an attachment to them. They wouldn't, the feelings of stress and anxiety that come after them wouldn't manifest, because the thought would come and you'd be able to see the uncertainty of it, the inevitability of your graduation in the first place, if it's the best path for you. There is no space where you can be certain that what is best is that you do your homework. You cannot be certain that what is best is that you graduate. You cannot be certain that what is best is that you wake up tomorrow morning. And so you're infinitely in a space of being in the moment, because there is no inevitability of the future. And so this feels super scary for the ego, because it needs something to latch on to, right? And so the certainty of the future is what we use to try to latch on to something so the ego has space to live. But what happens is when you inspect these certainties in that space of inevitability, you begin to see how these certainties are what is causing the stress. That I need to graduate, the I need to wake up in the morning, the I need to do this homework, is the thoughts that are causing, at least indirectly. I mean, the real thoughts are probably, if I don't graduate, my life is going to suck, is probably the thought. If I don't do my homework, I'm going to fail the class. And if I fail the class, I'm a failure and I'm not loved. Those are probably more the thoughts. But they lead to, and they're attached to it. And so what happens is if you're in that space where you see those thoughts come, and you see how, when you digest them, how they make you feel, and they no longer control you and rule you, the homework either gets done or it doesn't. You either graduate or you don't, because all there is the process that's unfolded. And your doing homework will be a part of it or it won't. And it's either you're in a space of dominating yourself into doing your homework, or accepting homework getting done, or dominating yourself and failing to do homework, or accepting and not doing your homework. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. For sure. I feel like that. I know if you are like well versed in this way of thinking, that was like a perfect answer. But I guess people like coming around to it, it's sort of like answered what and not how.
Okay. Right. Yeah. And the how is what I've been trying to do for the past like 3 years.
Oh yeah, the how, that's that's like the pearls, that's what every self-help book author is trying to give to you.
Yeah.
That's where someone that life is derailed, might go to church and talk to the priest and say, how help me.
Yeah.
But what's are everywhere for sure, and some better than others. And it is a big ask, and knowing the what is crucial to understanding the how. But if possible, I want to redirect the question with more emphasis on the how.
Yeah, on the how. Okay, so yeah, not giving the what in this instance. If I were to give advice to a person that was in a situation like that, it would be to, when a thought comes, such as, I need to do this homework, do not let it take you. Do not take your thoughts for granted. And instead, engage with a thought. And when you see a thought is an inevitability, such as if we go to one of the secondary thoughts of, if I don't graduate college, I'll hate my life. Okay. That is an inevitability that comes from the space of unknown. There is no possible way. And so, an general inquiry into the thought. If I don't graduate college, I'll hate my life. Is that true? And you may say, yes, it's true. I've done all this work. I've done everything I can up to this point to lead up to graduating college. That's all that it's been, these last 3 years have depended on, is graduating college. And if it doesn't happen, then these last 3 years will be a waste. So on and so forth. But what you can do is every single proof that you have that comes is an inevitability that comes from an unknown. And if you are truly dedicated to seeing this experience and seeing the truth, you will eventually come to the point where if you take all the proofs that you have that come from, if I graduate college, I'll hate my life, you will get to the point where you realize, either through humiliation, humbling of yourself, or through a psychotic break, that you actually just cannot know. And once when it gets there, it moves from that space of certainty into uncertainty, where it then can be tinkered with more. And it's far less personal. But this process is a practice. This is a legitimate, hard-hitting practice. Take your inevitable thoughts that you see, don't take them for granted, and question them. And eventually, they'll either explode and break, or they'll soften up to where you can tinker with them. And that happens through uncertainty. So you're purposely moving into a space of uncertainty. And now it's not inevitable that you'll hate your life. And some of the best questions that I've seen from teachers that you can ask these uncertainties now is, how does this thought make me feel? I feel like we've gone through this, but how does this thought make me feel? This is a very important practice in my life. So, and we'll see that if I don't graduate, I'll hate my life, makes me feel stressed. Makes me feel like I need to be doing more. My heart races. I wake up with a headache. It's hard to sleep. I don't want to do my homework. I'm hating my classes. And it's all coming from this weight that is coming from, if I don't graduate, I'll hate my life. And another great question that can come after that is, what would life be like without this thought? And so that question, you take some imagination and you say, I'm in class and I don't have a thought, if I don't graduate, I'll hate my life. And you'll see, sorry, I just saw the comment from H. Binsock 2021. We'll get into that in a second. Without that thought, you can witness how much simpler your life will be just through imagination. And if you go through these things, you will hit the point to where you will see how the thought is affecting you negatively and what hurts and what doesn't. And even farther, you can turn the thought to its opposite. And that being, if the original thought is, if I don't graduate, I'll hate my life, it can be, if I don't graduate, I won't hate my life. And that is either just as true or more true. And you can give examples. Does this practice sort of make sense? At least playing and inquiring with thoughts.
Yeah. Will you just because you have mentioned them again, and I don't know if I have them in the notes, just restate those big inquiries about thought that you can use.
Yeah. So step 1 is moving the thought from certainty and inevitability into uncertainty. And that is a discriminative look at, is this thought true? And can you absolutely know for 100% certain that this thought is true or not? And if there's any sort of certainty that yes, or if you're like, oh, 98% yes, that like 11% is enough to give you a full no. It has to be yes or no.
98 plus 11?
Yeah, that's 100%, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
98 plus 11.
Yeah.
All right. But if you are still certain, then you can come up with your proofs and you put those proofs up against, is it true or not? And eventually you will just explode. So after it has moved into the uncertainty, through allowing yourself to see that what you think isn't certain, you ask the questions, how does this thought make me feel? And that allows you to see the fire that you're sticking your hand into. Basically, that thought, the whole time that you've been taking it for granted, you've been sticking your hand on a hot iron and just like leaving it there. And this process, this question of how does that make me feel, allows you to witness finally that you're sticking your hand on a hot iron. And then what would life be like without that thought is the opposite of that. That is, what is it like when my hand is not on a hot iron? It feels pretty good most of the time. And then lastly is turning it around to the opposite. And I would suggest, because it can get tricky, to add not to the statement. Don't take anything away. Because if you take the statement, I'll hate my life if I don't graduate college, and you go, I'll hate my life if I graduate college, you can play around with that thought, but it might not be helpful. So adding not and saying, I'll hate my life, I won't hate my life if I don't graduate college, can be a little easier to tinker with. Welcome to my seminar. I am a hippie weirdo, and you just got taught. And it is a process that there's a whole book written on it, but I first got introduced to it from like some Hindu saint from like hundreds of years ago, and then I saw this American lady who was talking about the same thing. Her name is Byron Katie, and that's where I got that from. So check her out if you're interested in looking more at what specifically she suggests and talks about.
I'm going to read Heather's comment.
Yes.
Guys, not to make this more complex, but your what and how will become much more clear once you figure out or clarify your why.
Mm-hmm.
And, we talked about intentionality and how I want to keep that as a through line. And it's something that I aspire to, really understand and, adopt into my life. And I think a big thing with intentionality is sort of like a proof for whether you're being intentional is that you just ask why, and then why to the answer of that, why to the answer of that. And either you arrive at an emphatic period, or it just kind of crumbles apart and you're like, yeah, actually, I don't really know. So going back to the bed metaphor, if you're laying in bed because you're relaxing, say why you're laying in bed, be like, I'm relaxing and my body is sore. This is a way to relax.
Mm-hmm.
There's not really like a why that follows that. Like, okay, fair. So now you can't sleep. Say, all right, why are you laying in bed? Because I need to go to sleep. And then you follow it up with the whys, and you kind of can tie yourself in a loop without ever arriving at, yes, this is why I'm doing it. This is the correct reason. This is the correct method.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Heather, I definitely, I think there's definitely a lot of truth to that can, not only like figuring it out necessarily maybe, but using it as a tool, like an examining tool, can help you figure out your hows.
Right. I think like the why that comes to mind right away for me is the why that comes to mind right away for me is so that I can be right, feel right, experience right. Not in the way that Tyler Joseph Swatlowski the first thinks is right, but in the way that I am in harmony exactly, perfectly with what's going on. And I think one of the reasons why I am oriented so strongly in that direction is because of some like experiences that I've had in my life that have shown me this harmony and what it feels like and what happens within it. Mystical experiences and such. I've yet to take psychedelics, but from what I've heard, psychedelics can show you an experience such as that. But through monster meditation sessions, basically for me, like a 3 days straight meditating has shown me this other thing. That was your father's question. How lovely.
It was lovely. And maybe the way I took it, I might not have even taken it big enough just to say, all right, so how do I do this? How do I be a good person?
Mm-hmm.
Like that does require saying, why am I doing anything?
Mm-hmm.
Which is it's a beautiful human problem to have. Like, yeah, it's something that's a cause of tons of anxiety and worry and like problems. But we're really one of the only species that experiences that turmoil. Like it would be so simple just to be, a fruit fly or a rabbit or a bee. And it's just like, why? Or I guess like maybe we go, what? Don't starve, don't get killed, have babies, reproduce, die. That's what. All right, how? Well, I'm a squirrel, and you see I run up the other side of the tree so that predators can't see me, and then I got killed, so that squirrel that does it faster, he's having babies, and like that's the how, and the why doesn't matter, man.
I'm a squirrel, baby. That's what squirrels do.
That's what we do. Yeah, I just like I see a fox or dog.
I can't believe you cucked a squirrel on live television. Not only did you emasculate him, but you made the other squirrel have babies.
Yeah, sorry, other squirrel. Yeah,
on live television.
On live television. Oh gosh.
Yeah, so for us, it's a way bigger question.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, I'm probably not going to starve. I'm not really in any danger of being killed, and maybe I don't even want to have kids, and that's fine. But there's still so much why that you have to deal with and use to guide your house.
Yeah.
Swat, you talked about you felt that part of this for you, the why is to be right.
Mm-hmm.
In the sort of harmony that you felt you've been able to discover and experience through practices like meditation and practices like these practices we're talking about. So do you feel like you've experienced mindlessness in the way we describe it as the sort of thing that we're pursuing but never actually achieve?
Standing here, I can say yeah, but like in those moments, it doesn't even make sense to put it into words of what it was like. It's the classic sort of like, oh, it's infallible thing. Like it's a cliche because when you experience something like that, it doesn't take place in here.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I would say that many times, I mean, like sometimes just go and poop for like 30 seconds, I'll just be like taken away and just perfectly right pooping. You're welcome.
What I don't know if you've seen the movie Soul, but I guess this kind of like complements
No.
that a bit. But if
I've
you
seen
haven't
trailers.
seen it, okay, Trevor, have you seen
it.
it? Okay. Well, I don't have to get into it. It's not important. It just reminded me of it. But what there seems to also be, given this sort of mystical, sort of like extra planar quality to mindlessness, it seems both exactly the same and completely different than genuine mindfulness. And as someone who has been, been trying to practice being so mindful for so long, and I think has done it in many different ways, or that's manifested in different ways. And you talk about this thing that perhaps could be what we think of as full mindlessness. What are the lines between them? What are the similarities? Are they two sides of the same coin? Are they completely
That's
different coins?
a good question. Wow, what a fun question.
Yeah, here's our local mind ambassador zooming in from planet Mars, folks.
Yeah. The through lines of it, the similarities, is that it's already happening. And the only issue is that we're in the way. Is that we have set up armor, walls, defenses against, or for our hearts, I guess, for our apparent safety. And these lines of separation separate us from something that is already in process. And the experience of that place is one where you are totally naked. You can be clothed, or you could be naked, but it is a pure vulnerability and nakedness to that which is in the moment. See, it's so like dumb sometimes to talk about because I feel so silly. I make fun of like the like spiritual teachers that I read a lot, and I all the time become one of them, saying these like sort of empty phrases that might point you in the right direction. But the differences are, here I can say I, and what I mean is this body, this mind, and this personality all wrapped into this kind of like cell where I can pinch myself and I feel it, and I can pitch the table and I know that the table isn't feeling what I am. But in that space, regardless of its reality or truth or not, the table and myself are moving through the same process. And that feels like, and what people call it, is one. The table and I are one. But that experience is a merging into the process that is happening in its full entirety. And I begin to fall away. And when I talk about I, what I talk about is the laws of physics and everything that is happening. I thought you were gonna get a lighthouse and bring the sanity ship back in.
I mean, I think the through line is I think, poignant and right in thinking, like, whether we're talking about full mindlessness, this sort of like truly unattainable thing that we think we want,
Mm-hmm.
and then mindfulness, the sort of like more like conventional thing that we think we should be practicing.
Mm-hmm.
It's the idea that like
Oh.
both those things can already be happening.
I
What?
will say that the thing that has brought me back every time has been the thought, oh my God, I can't believe it's finally happening. And then I'm back. I'll be experiencing the yum yum, and I'll be like, oh my God, it's the yum yum. Fuck, I'm back, I'm here.
I mean, okay, so that kind of reminds me of like Inception. Like, like when they're in the dream, they have like the token that reminds them whether or not they're dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you have something that can bring you back to not being in the way of the things already happening, i.e., mindlessness and mindfulness? Like, is there something that, like, other than just saying, oh my gosh, it's happening? Like, is there, whether it's a practice or like a state of being or something that kind of brings you to beyond just like these sort of, like, as you say, like, you sometimes get caught like in these like philosophical truisms that might point you in the right direction, or like these abstract things that like me and Trevor are trying to bring to land? Like, what in your personal life brings you to things that are happening around you, as you say, mindlessness and mindfulness?
Yeah, for me, it's talking about love. Mm-hmm. And something that I led a bunch of Bible studies at the camp. It was a part of my position. And in one of the Bible studies, a part of it was, if I remembered how much I loved you, the abstracted you and the material you, all of you, if I remembered that, I would have no choice but to cry all the time. And that was somewhat true. There's plenty of Bible studies where I would get that remembering. One of them I talked about dependency and how beautiful it is to depend. And that was a weepy Bible study for me. I cried a lot. And so talking about love is that a material thing that can, by accident, flip my switch, and not on purpose. I can talk about love on purpose to try to awaken myself, but it has never worked. It has only been when I have accidentally gotten out of the way and opened, sort of not by my own volition. The heat just kicked on. I like the silence. Don't
aside
worry.
From, yeah, that does remind me. This is an aside, but there's the other cliche about like, oh, like how loud silence can be, but also there's also a sort of beauty in like how much you can handle a loud silence and whom you can handle that with.
Yeah.
Like, I was talking about this with Mari, who I believe is still watching. I think she's
bless her
now.
Bless you, Mari.
Yes, hello, Mari. We were FaceTiming a few months ago, and we noticed that she and I, like, respectively, for each other, like, we're the kind of people that you could be in silence. And it wouldn't feel like uncomfortable or weird or as if you needed to fill it with something. But that the silence itself was part of the experience of FaceTiming. Like, I mean, part of it is just like it reminds you of like being with someone in person. Hello, Mari. Like when you're hanging out with someone, there will be silences.
Yeah.
So like the virtual makeup of it, like to fully feel like you're with them, the silence wouldn't be uncomfortable, even though, like, especially through the phone or like on FaceTime, it's weird to have silences. It would feel like even more restorative. But like even in person, like you don't have to have silences. Like even in person, you want to fill those with, you know, just like that's the common tendency. But like to have someone where like you don't need to fill them because that's part of the reason you're with them is to share silence.
Right.
That is A, something that isn't always something you can have with everyone. But B is something that in general, even like if you have special people in your life, it's hard to do that with special people in your life too. So it takes both having a special person, but also a sort of self practice of finding a sort of solace or comfort in silence.
Yeah.
I think.
Go ahead.
Yes.
I want to take this a little bit further. I talked about one thing that Stephen Covey talks about in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You got dependence, not so great; independence, good; interdependence, great.
Oh, right.
So just using that sort of like 3 level. Like normally you hear independence, like she's independent, like oh awesome, but I didn't even know there was interdependence. That's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
There's like not being able to handle silences, sort of like dependence. There's handling comfortable loud silences, it's independence. But then I feel like there's some people in my life where I get to the point where in those silences you have not even just nonverbal communication, but just like silent, gestureless communication that just happens. And like that's like you've really reached like a sort of a synergy and like a relationship with this person that's feels even better than having a comfortable silence.
It reminds me of that was actually great also, by the way, Trevor, but it reminds me of like of course in Avatar, like the whole thing, like when they're like using their braids and like connecting to the trees or like each other, like it's kind of sexual, but like that's sort of just like, I think it wasn't just a proxy for sex. I was like, it was a proxy for this sort of like spiritual, like natural connection, because they were doing it with both like animals, like the planet, the tree, like the big like planetary life force tree, like the fellow Avatarian people. And like that reminds me of like, if humans weren't here, like of course you'd hear like animals making noises and things like that, and like natural sounds like water and things like that, but like it would be silent in a way, like the thing you would hear is just the things around you, the ambiance, the atmosphere, the literal surroundings of you.
Yeah. When
I think there's something beautiful in like.
Oh, are you wrapping it up?
Yeah, just because I think there's something beautiful in like replicating that in a way.
When I've taught meditation in the past, what I've taught about silence is that the cultivating a quality of silence is one that quietness isn't required. And you are building a space where the noises that are happening can be integrated within the silence. I think that hits pretty well. Also, the quietness is sometimes the hard part, not the noises. And so integrating quietness into your silence as well. Like the mindless watching Netflix.
Or having the TV on in the background to fall asleep, because the dead silent room is going to be way more distracting.
Yeah,
if you aren't used to handling it.
I've been living on my own for a couple of years now. I used to live with Trevor at their house, and
at your house.
Yeah. And then after that, I've been living on my own and pretty secluded and isolated as well. And I was talking to one of Hannah's roommates it's her brothers, about how that tough it was. And the like hard part about it is when you have like roommates, there is a certain tension and the space is filled in a certain way where you can, instead of confront yourself, confront the people in whichever way you interface with them. So I interfaced with Trevor in a very healthy way. And so I kind of extracted value out of Trevor by cracking jokes and being loving and fun and bubbly and sometimes complaining. Whatever the situation, it was a very loving, open, and comfortable relationship. There's another roommate where it was like walking on eggshells a little bit. And I had like confronted a little bit in myself, but not enough of where am I setting boundaries and controlling and trying to dominate other people. And when I lived on my own, I had no choice but to interface with myself and confront this thing and what is going on, instead of having that space be filled with some other things as well. Now that we talked about silence, that one was really nice.
That one felt good. That one felt really good.
It's a good breath.
I feel like this conversation has been sort of linear, going nowhere, instead of like flower petals kind of coming back to the hub.
Yeah.
Which is totally fine, of course, but I might be at my
End of thought
end of the
capacity.
conversation time mode, green zone.
The greens. Wow. Well, how, like, we talked about silence. How would you feel about ending this time here and like just a little bit of silence?
I would like that.
I'm with it.
See you at Mike's, everyone.
See you at Mike's.
See
How
you at
long do you
Mike's.
think that was?
Never long enough.
Never long enough. I think it was about 30 to 40 seconds.
Sounds right to my internal clock.
Yeah.
That's cocky. Big pilot guy. Got a big pilot
Yeah.
cock. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, jeez. Oh my god. Oh, God.
I tried to stop it. I felt my tongue not
Yeah.
move in the way that it needed to. Alrighty. Well,
Well,
see
on
you
that
at
note,
Mike's.
cheers.